They said it loud enough for her to hear. "Deal with this senile woman." The words floated down the hospital corridor like something dropped by accident, except accidents usually come with apologies. Eleanor sat in her wheelchair, hands folded neatly in her lap, staring at the scuffed linoleum floor. She had learned long ago that looking up invited explanations no one really wanted to give. The nurse sighed. Papers shuffled. A pen clicked. Eleanor smiled softly, the way she always did when people assumed her mind had gone somewhere unreachable. At 81, she had discovered that silence made others careless. They spoke freely around her, believing her thoughts were as slow as her steps. But Eleanor remembered everything. She remembered the weight of newborns placed in her arms, the night she stitched clothes by candlelight when money ran thin, the way her late husband used to hum while fixing broken chairs. Her memories weren't gone. They were simply stored carefully, like letters tied with ribbon, taken out only when needed. They wheeled her into a small room with a window facing the parking lot. A young social worker entered, tapping at a tablet. "Mrs. Hale," she said slowly, loudly. "Do you know where you are?" Eleanor met her eyes. "Agnes Hospital," she replied calmly. "Third floor, geriatric wing. The radiator by the window knocks every 7 minutes." The social worker blinked. "Well," she recovered, forcing a smile. Sometimes patients have moments of clarity. Moments, as if her entire life were a flickering bulb. Later, her son arrived. Daniel. He didn't look at her right away. He spoke to the doctor instead, voice low but sharp. "She forgets things, gets confused. It's better if you just handle it. Handle it. Like an inconvenience. Like an old receipt stuffed in a drawer." That night, Eleanor lay awake, listening to the radiator knock. She thought of the house Daniel wanted to sell, the accounts he assumed she no longer understood, the signature he hoped she'd give without reading. In the morning, she asked for a pen. She requested a lawyer by name, the one who had helped her revise her will after her husband passed. The nurse hesitated, surprised, but complied. When Daniel returned, confident and rehearsed, he found Eleanor sitting upright, documents neatly arranged. "I'm not senile," she said gently. "I'm observant. And I'm tired of being spoken over." His face drained of color. "I've updated my directives," she continued. "Medical, financial, living arrangements. You'll still be my son, but you won't be my decision maker." For the first time in years, Daniel didn't interrupt. Eleanor leaned back, folding her hands again. "Next time," she added softly, "deal with me by listening." And for once, the room was quiet enough for her words to stay. The word spread quickly through the ward. Room 317. The old woman who asked for a lawyer. Nurses no longer spoke around Eleanor as if she were furniture. They knocked before entering. They explained procedures. Respect returned in small, careful pieces, like a language people had forgotten how to speak. Daniel didn't come back the next day, or the day after. Eleanor noticed, of course. She noticed everything. The way absence could be louder than shouting. The way guilt preferred distance. On the third morning, a different visitor arrived, Maya. Her granddaughter stood awkwardly in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes uncertain. She had Daniel's sharp jaw but Eleanor's steady gaze. "Dad didn't tell me you were like this," Maya said, gesturing vaguely. "Alive?" Eleanor replied. Maya laughed despite herself. Then she sat. They talked for hours. About college, about how Daniel had grown angry after Eleanor refused to simplify her finances, about how everyone assumed aging meant fading. "They keep saying you don't understand anymore," Maya admitted quietly. Eleanor reached for her hand. Her grip was thin but unshaking. "They confuse forgetting names with forgetting worth," she said. "I forget words. I don't forget truth." That afternoon the lawyer returned. Papers were finalized. A new living arrangement was secured, an assisted apartment near the park, not the locked facility Daniel had selected. Eleanor would have help, not control. When Daniel finally appeared, it was unannounced. He stood at the foot of her bed, like a stranger waiting for permission. "You embarrassed me," he said. Eleanor studied her son, the lines around his eyes. The man she had defended her entire life. "I raised you to speak clearly," she replied. "Not kindly, but clearly." "This is clarity." He scoffed. "You really think you can manage on your own?" "I managed you," she said softly, "while your father worked double shifts, while the roof leaked, while I stitched hope into hems no one saw." Daniel opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time, he saw fear in his own reflection, not of losing her, but of losing control. "You called me senile," Eleanor continued, and still expected obedience, silence. "I may forget where I put my glasses," she said, "but I remember when people stop loving and start using." Daniel left without another word. 2 weeks later, Eleanor moved into her new place. Sunlight poured through wide windows. The park smelled of wet grass and beginnings. Maya visited often. They played chess. Eleanor won more than she lost. Sometimes staff would speak slowly to her. Sometimes strangers would assume she let them. Because Eleanor had learned something powerful. Being underestimated was a kind of freedom. And if anyone ever said again, "Deal with this senile woman," Eleanor knew exactly how she'd respond, by reminding them that wisdom doesn't disappear. It waits. Eleanor learned the rhythm of her new life quickly. Morning light through thin curtains, the sound of joggers passing the park. The kettle whistling just loud enough to remind her she was still in charge of her days. She labeled drawers now, not because she had to, but because she chose to. Control, she discovered, felt different when it was gentle. One afternoon, a letter arrived. No return address. She recognized the handwriting instantly, Daniel. She didn't open it right away. She made tea, sat by the window. Let the moment breathe. When she finally unfolded the paper, his words spilled out stiff and careful, like someone walking on ice. "Mom, I didn't handle things right. Everyone says I was just trying to help. But maybe I was scared. You've always been the strong one. Watching you age felt like losing the ground under my feet." Eleanor stopped there. She smiled, not in triumph, but in understanding. Fear had always made people cruel before it made them honest. That evening, she went to the community room downstairs. A discussion group was forming, memory and identity. Mostly older residents. A few younger caregivers. They were supposed to talk about forgetfulness, coping, decline. When it was Eleanor's turn, she didn't talk about memory tests or medication. She talked about erasure. How quickly people stop asking you, she said, and start deciding for you. How they use the word care when they really mean convenience. Heads nodded. Some eyes filled. A man across the circle whispered, "My daughter took my car keys before asking if I still wanted to drive." Eleanor listened. She always listened. Over the next weeks, the group grew. Someone suggested inviting families. Another suggested writing things down, not for doctors, but for themselves. Stories, boundaries, wishes. Eleanor brought a notebook. She titled the first page, "Things I Am Not." Not invisible, not useless, not a burden, not senile. One morning, Daniel showed up again. This time, he knocked. Maya stood beside him. "I'm not here to fix anything," he said. "I'm here to listen, if you'll let me." Eleanor studied him. The apology wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was real. "You can sit," she said. Listening is harder than fixing. They talked not about money or control, but about fear. About how children sometimes shrink their parents because it's easier than watching them remain whole. Daniel didn't cry, but his voice broke. Before he left, Eleanor handed him a copy of her notebook. "Read this," she said, "not as my son, as a man who will age someday." That night, Eleanor wrote one more line. "They tried to deal with me. Instead, I dealt with the truth." She closed the notebook. Outside, the park lights flickered on, and Eleanor, far from fading, felt more present than she had in years. Winter arrived quietly. It settled into the park, in pale mornings and early dusk, into Eleanor's bones in a way she no longer fought. She wore thicker sweaters. She moved slower. But nothing inside her dimmed. The notebook grew heavier with pages. Residents came to her now not because she was loud, but because she was clear. They asked how to speak to doctors who talked past them, how to tell children no without apologizing, how to stay kind without surrendering themselves. Eleanor never gave speeches. She asked questions. What do you want? Who decided you couldn't? When did care start meaning control? Answers followed. One afternoon, a new woman arrived at the building. Ruth, 76, hands shaking, eyes sharp with panic. Her son hovered beside her, answering questions Ruth hadn't been asked yet. Eleanor watched from her chair. She recognized the posture, the interruption, the way love hid behind authority. When the son stepped away to take a call, Ruth leaned close. They say I forget, she whispered. Maybe I do, but I remember when my voice mattered. Eleanor reached for her hand. Then it still does, she said. You just have to use it louder than their fear. That evening Eleanor's health faltered. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet weakness, a long rest that didn't end when she expected. Maya sat by her bed, reading from the notebook. Daniel stood near the window, silent and smaller than she remembered. Eleanor woke briefly. She didn't panic. She looked at them, really looked. You learned, she said, her voice thin but steady. Daniel nodded. Too late. No, Eleanor replied. Late is still time. She closed her eyes again. This time, when she didn't wake, the room stayed gentle. No alarms. No chaos. Just breath slowing, then stopping like a sentence ending exactly where it should. At the memorial, there were no speeches about decline. Maya read from the notebook. She was not difficult, Maya said. She was deliberate. She was not confused. She was careful. She was not senile. She was tired of being dismissed. The building named the discussion group after her. The Eleanor Hale Circle. Families attended now. So did staff. Stories were shared. Boundaries respected. Forms rewritten to include a simple question at the top. What matters to you? Daniel kept the notebook. Years later, when his own hands shook for the first time, he opened it again, and on the final page, in Eleanor's careful handwriting, were the words that outlived her. If they ever tell you to deal with someone like me, listen first. Because wisdom doesn't vanish with age, it just stops begging to be heard. And because one woman refused to disappear quietly, many others never had to. Buried Eleanor on a quiet morning, winter light resting gently on the ground. No one spoke of her as fragile or confused. They spoke of her as someone who changed how a room behaved. Maya kept the notebook. Daniel kept the lessons. Months later, the building still echoed with Eleanor's presence. People paused before interrupting. Doctors asked before deciding. Families listened longer than they used to. A single question now appeared on every intake form. What matters to you? Daniel would read the notebook on difficult days, especially when fear whispered that control was safer than trust. On the last page, Eleanor's handwriting steadied him. Age does not erase truth. It reveals who respects it. They had tried to deal with her. Instead, she taught them. And long after her voice was gone, her dignity remained alive in every person who refused to be spoken over, ignored, or quietly erased. Because Eleanor did not fade, she endured.